in a quiet riverside village nestled along the tranquil waters of the Thalassa River, where fog draped the dawn like a ghostly veil, a newlywed couple, Min and Lyra, moved into an old, forgotten house they had inherited from Min's late uncle. The house, though worn and mossy, stood on a seemingly sacred patch of land passed down for generations. Lyra, an artist drawn to silence and mystery, fell in love with its weathered wooden beams and tangled garden of jasmine. They moved in on a humid summer morning, their footsteps echoing across the creaky floorboards as they brought in their belongings. The neighbors kept their distance, exchanging hushed whispers at the sight of them. One elder even muttered a prayer while passing by. Lyra thought nothing of it, villagers and their superstitions, she thought. Min, though, sensed an unusual heaviness in the air, as if the walls of the house had been holding their breath for decades. That first night, after they shared a modest meal of fish stew and rice, Min sat under the flickering light bulb, flipping through his uncle's old journals. Most pages were filled with crop records and market prices, mundane things, until he found an entry dated 27 years ago, written in a shaky hand. If they dig again, the curse will return. It is not just a grave, it is a gate. He froze. The ink had bled slightly, as if the page had once been wet with tears or something else. He showed it to Lyra, who dismissed it with a laugh. Probably just old man rambling, she said, though her eyes lingered on the words longer than she admitted. The second night, they invited Min's childhood friend Duke and his wife Naomi over for dinner. The four of them laughed and drank under oil lanterns in the backyard. As the night deepened, Duke spoke of strange happenings when they were young, how Min's uncle would speak to the empty air, or disappear for days and return gaunt and silent. He used to say the floor would talk to him, Duke whispered. He'd press his ear against it, listening like it was breathing. Lyra smiled nervously and changed the subject. After their guests left, and the wind began to whisper through the cracks in the shutters, Min lay in bed but couldn't sleep. There was a soft, rhythmic sound beneath the floor. Tap. Tap. Scrape. Tap. It wasn't mice, he was sure. The pattern was too deliberate. It almost sounded like fingernails. He leaned over and pressed his ear against the wooden boards. At first, silence. Then, a faint voice, as if from the depths of the earth. Get out. He bolted upright, his breath ragged. But Lyra was fast asleep, unaware. Min stayed awake until morning. The next day, Min dug a shallow trench in the backyard to bury compost. As he scooped into the earth, his shovel struck something hard wood. Curious, he dug further and unearthed a rotted coffin lid, slightly ajar. Inside was no body, but instead a bundle of blackened hair and a torn piece of red cloth that looked eerily fresh. The air turned cold. Lyra, who had been painting nearby, screamed and dropped her brush. She claimed she saw a woman standing behind Min, with long white hair and no eyes. But when Min turned, there was nothing. They reburied the coffin and tried to forget. That night, the floorboards moaned and shifted as if under great weight. Lyra woke to the sound of whispering in the kitchen, her name being repeated over and over, Lyra. 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 When she crept in with the candle, all was still, but the candle blew out on its own. By the fourth night, the house no longer felt like theirs. Men saw wet footprints on the hallway floor that didn't belong to either of them. Lyra's paintings began to change overnight, depicting strange, faceless figures and shadowed windows she claimed she hadn't painted. Desperate, men turned to old man Kien, the village herbalist, who lived alone by the bamboo grove. Kien was once a monk, they said, before he left the order under mysterious circumstances. When men showed him the red cloth and hair, the old man's eyes widened. "This is not a relic," Kien said. "It's a seal." "A seal?" Men asked. "Yes," the man rasped. "To keep something in." He instructed men to leave the house immediately, but men refused. "My wife. She's already being affected. We need to end this." Kien sighed, gave him a bundle of blessed reeds and told him, "Place these at the corners of the house tonight. Do not let the wind blow them away." That night, men did as told. He placed the reeds at the house's four corners and waited, flashlight in hand. The wind picked up violently. Lyra began screaming in her sleep, thrashing. Men rushed to her, only to find her eyes rolled back, whispering in a voice not her own. "He buried me. He sealed me in. You broke the pact." The windows shattered. The lights flickered and died. The floor began to split. Men tried to carry Lyra out, but she clawed at the walls, unwilling to leave. Shadows coalesced into the form of a woman, her mouth sewn shut, her hair floating like smoke. The room shrieked in a voice not heard by ears but felt in bones. Suddenly, the front door burst open. Old man Kien stood there, holding a string of brass bells and a staff etched with ancient glyphs. He struck the floor 3 times. The shrieking ceased. The shadow dissolved. Lyra collapsed unconscious. At dawn, Kien explained everything. "A woman once lived here. She was executed unjustly, buried alive by the river lord for cursing his son. She vowed vengeance. Your uncle discovered her grave and tried to contain her. He offered his life to do it. But when you dug, you broke the seal. She has returned." Min, tears in his eyes, asked what could be done. "You must find her name," Kien said. "It was erased from history, but her name holds the key. Without it, she cannot pass on. And until she does, she will haunt this land." For 3 days after the confrontation, Lyra barely spoke. Her memories were hazy, as if they belonged to someone else. But every night she painted without realizing brush strokes born of something that wasn't entirely her. Min found her canvases in the morning, filled with scenes he had never seen, a woman tied to a stake, villagers with torches, a stone well sealed shut with red ropes. Old man Kien returned at dusk on the third day. "We must go to the temple ruins," he said. "There's a monk there blind, but he sees the truths others avoid. He might know her name." Min and Lyra followed Kien up the hill into the whispering bamboo forest, where the wind never stopped, even when the air was still. They reached a half-collapsed pagoda built of red stone. The monk, Master Tamlin, sat cross-legged in the shadow of a withered Bodhi tree. Though blind, his eyes opened when they arrived. "She has awoken," he said, before they even spoke. Min asked him about the woman buried under the house. "She wants us to know her name." Tamlin replied, "She had no tombstone. No chants were spoken at her death. She was erased in both name and memory. But names leave residue sounds, whispers. To recover it, one must enter the place where she waits." "Where is that?" Lyra asked. The monk pointed toward a cave hidden beneath the tree's roots. "The Undervale. A memory realm." Before Min could argue, Lyra stepped forward. "I'll go." The Undervale was no ordinary cave. As soon as Lyra stepped inside, the air changed. Warm and sweet, like forgotten incense. A staircase led her down, deeper and deeper, until the world above vanished behind a curtain of fog. Then she was standing in a village not hers but one soaked in sepia tones, like an old photo burned at the edges. Children played with dolls made of straw. Women carried baskets on their heads. But no one saw her. She was a ghost to them, or perhaps they were ghosts to her. She followed the street to a shrine where a young woman was tied to a wooden post. Her white robe was stained with mud and blood, her hair matted with dirt. A crowd jeered and threw stones. The woman didn't beg. She only stared straight ahead. "She bewitched the son of the river lord," someone cried. "She brought famine to our fields." Another shouted. "She whispered in the night, stole souls." A priest lit a torch. "No," Lyra whispered. "Stop." But she was too late. Flames consumed the woman. And just before she burned, she screamed not in pain but in defiance. "My name will return. My ashes will become your nightmares." Lyra was thrown back from the vision, gasping. Her arms were marked with ashes, though no fire touched her. Tamlin helped her sit upright. "You saw it?" he asked. "Yes. But I didn't hear her name. Only her scream." The monk nodded gravely. "You are closer now. She's showing you what they did to her." Back at the house, Min discovered that the basement door, once sealed shut, was now open. Dust and cobwebs draped the staircase. He descended, flashlight in hand. The air was damp, walls lined with old carvings and family sigils. And in the center of the room, a single wooden mask lay on the floor, cracked and painted with a red frown. When he picked it up, something shifted in the darkness behind him. He turned. A pale figure stood in the corner. A woman. Her face blank. Her mouth stitched with black threads. She raised a hand and pointed at the ceiling, the very floor they had been sleeping on. Then she was gone. Men rushed upstairs and tore up the floorboards beneath their bed. What he found made his stomach twist: a second, smaller coffin, this one sealed with rusted nails and a single word carved in old script: Shuyan. Kien. Men shouted, calling the old man. When Kien saw the name, he froze. "It is a forbidden name," he said. They feared even speaking it would give her power. "That is the ghost's name, Nwenti Shuyan." That night, Lyra dreamed again. But this time, it was Shuyan's dream. She stood in a field of reeds, holding a baby in her arms, hiding from soldiers. A man, perhaps her lover, rushed toward her, only to be struck down. Her cries echoed into the hills, unheard. Betrayed by the village she tried to protect, she was branded a witch, and buried beneath what would become Min's house. And then the baby was taken from her. Lyra awoke with a scream, clutching her own stomach, tears falling like rain. Men gathered salt, candles, and the bundle of reeds Kien had given him. "We need to put her to rest," he said. But Kien interrupted. "It's not enough to bury her. We must give her back her name. And we must speak it at the threshold of her death." They prepared for a ritual at the strike of midnight. The wind howled like wolves as they gathered in the living room, just above the unsealed coffin. Men lit the candles. Lyra held a scroll with her name Nwenti Shuyan written in red ink. Kien chanted in an old tongue, while the shadows around them stirred like water. Then, Lyra spoke her name aloud. "Nwenti Shuyan." Silence. Then, a sound like breaking bones. The floorboards split. The coffin beneath cracked open. Smoke poured out, taking the shape of a woman with stitched lips, her eyes weeping blood. Men stepped forward. "We know your name. You are not forgotten." Shuyan's mouth opened, threads falling away, and for the first time, she spoke. "Then remember, my child." And vanished. Lyra collapsed. Men caught her. Kien fell to his knees, exhausted. The storm outside broke. Dawn arrived with golden light. Birds returned to the garden. But the floor where the coffin lay was now empty. No wood. No soil. Just earth. Men and Lyra stared at each other. "Is it over?" she asked. Kien didn't answer. Because from somewhere deep in the soil, a baby's cry echoed once. The cry echoed once and then silence. Min and Lyra froze, the faint sound lingering in the back of their minds like a phantom itch. Old man Kien, still kneeling by the shattered floorboards, turned his head slightly, as if trying to hear more clearly. "You heard that too?" Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes," Min replied. "It sounded like a baby." Kien rose slowly, eyes narrowing. "The child. She said we must remember her child. That part of her is still trapped." The morning sun streamed through the broken window, but it did little to warm the coldness that had settled in their bones. The coffin was gone, as if the earth had swallowed it whole. And where it once lay, now there was a narrow crack in the ground so thin and dark it looked like a scar cut into reality itself. That afternoon, Lyra sat in her studio, surrounded by unfinished paintings. But her hands moved without conscious effort, guided by something else. Brush after brush, stroke after stroke, until she stepped back in shock. She had painted a well circular, ancient, made of moss-covered stones. But around it were strange symbols, clawed into the dirt. And inside the well, two eyes stared up at her. One belonged to a woman. The other, a child. Min found her an hour later, shivering, her hands stained with black ink. "I didn't paint this," she whispered. Later that evening, Kien brought them an old scroll he had kept hidden for decades. It was brittle, covered in soot and faded ink, but it bore a sigil neither Min nor Lyra recognized, a three-headed serpent biting its own tail, encircling the symbol for life. "This was given to me by my master," Kien explained. "It's from the Qin dynasty, during the time when the spirits of the river were still worshipped. This sigil is a binding mark, a seal used in blood rituals to contain not one soul, but two." Lyra's eyes widened. "You mean the child was sealed with her?" Kien nodded. "Or worse, used as the seal." They needed answers, and fast. That night, they visited the Temple of Forgotten Names, a crumbling ruin deep in the jungle where monks once preserved the records of those who died unjustly. According to legend, any name lost to history still echoed in the temple's echoing stone halls. With torches in hand, they searched the shrine. Stone tablets lined the inner sanctum, inscribed with the names of the condemned. And there, near the back, hidden behind a broken altar, they found it. Shuyan burned, buried, unblessed. Child unnamed, sealed. Her blood became the pact. Lyra gasped. She didn't just die. She sacrificed her child to stop something. Min looked closer. Wait, what pact? Suddenly, the torches flickered, and the air turned thick. A gust of wind roared through the chamber, and with it, a whisper. He is still beneath. The flame died. Back at the house, Lyra could not sleep. She sat by the window, staring at the place where the floor had cracked. The soil beneath it seemed darker now, as if soaked in ink. A single thought kept echoing in her head: he is still beneath. Just before dawn, she heard it again. The baby's cry. But it wasn't coming from the house. It was coming from the old well in the woods. Min and Kien joined her at the edge of the trees. The villagers had long avoided the well, calling it Mother's Mouth. Children who wandered too close claimed to hear someone calling their name. The stone wall was half collapsed, covered in ivy, and the opening sealed by wooden planks and red twine, worn thin by time. Kien examined the bindings. This is ancient warding. Whatever was sealed inside, they feared it. Should we open it? Min asked. No, Kien answered quickly. But we must listen. He knelt by the well and placed an ear close to the boards. For a long time, there was only wind. But then, bring me back. Not a baby. A man's voice. Deep. Angry. Kien shot up, pale. That is not the child. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. Then who is it? Later that day, a letter arrived unsigned, delivered by a crow that landed on their porch and stared at them until they retrieved it. You've unsealed the mother, but the father still sleeps. Do not dig further, or the blood pact breaks. He was never meant to wake. Beneath the note, a symbol, the same three-headed serpent, now drawn in blood. Min clenched his jaw. What the hell is this? Kien's hands trembled. There's more to this than we thought. This was never about Shuyan alone. Someone or something else was buried with her. That night, Lyra dreamed again. She stood in the jungle, barefoot, fog swirling around her knees. Ahead was the well, but it was larger, its stones glowing faintly. From within, a figure rose, a man, tall, with no face. His hands were shackled, but chains burned away as he climbed upward. Behind him, a child sat silently in the water. The man reached for her. Then Lyra heard Shuyan's voice, echoing in agony. I burned to keep him below. I gave everything. But you broke the seal. Lyra awoke screaming. Min held her. It's just a dream. No, she said. It was a warning. Kien arrived at sunrise with news. I went back to the archives, he said. The child's name was Mai Shuyan Lin. She wasn't just sealed, she was the key. Her soul was used to keep her father imprisoned. A powerful spirit. A being worshipped in the old days as the nameless husband. And now we've disturbed the seal, Min muttered. Kien nodded. We didn't free a ghost. We cracked the prison of a dormant god. As they stood in silence, thunder rumbled though no clouds graced the sky. Far beneath the earth, the cry rose again. But it was not a cry of pain. It was a cry of awakening. The storm rolled in without warning. No wind, no rain, just thunder that cracked the sky like a whip. And beneath their home, the earth trembled. Men stood at the window, staring into the trees, clutching the serpent-sealed letter in his hand. His thoughts churned like the clouds above. Who the hell is the nameless husband? He muttered. Old man Qian answered from across the room. He is not a ghost. He's what they used to call a Daohana spirit that was once human but transcended death and identity. Worshipped. Feared. Forgotten. But why was he sealed with Shuyan? Lyra asked, clutching her coat tight. Qian's eyes darkened. Because she loved him. That night, Lyra sat alone in her studio, trying to paint away the weight in her chest. But her hand refused to move as her thoughts drifted back to the name, Mai Shuyanlin. The child. The key. The sacrifice. Suddenly, her reflection in the window shimmered. Not her face but another. A young girl with long, dark hair, eyes wide with sorrow. Lyra gasped and stepped back. The window fogged over. And in the condensation, a message appeared, as if written by an invisible finger. Come home. Then came the baby's cry, closer, louder. And the smell of jasmine. Qian found an ancient text tucked away behind false boards in his attic. He brought it to Min and Lyra the next morning. The book was bound in animal hide, its ink brown with age. It detailed a forbidden ritual called Ketkat Tam Mok, the binding of bone and spirit. Shuyan was a spiritualist, Qian explained. She loved the man before he became the nameless one. She begged the river priests to save him after he was cursed by his own greed for immortality. Lyra leaned in. She made a deal. She offered herself. And when that wasn't enough, she offered her unborn child. The priests used the baby's soul to forge a seal trapping both parents in a cycle of torment. Min's voice cracked. But now that we've broken the floor, released her name. We've broken the balance, Qian finished grimly. And he is waking. At nightfall, they returned to the well. Qian had prepared sacred rope, charms, and a talisman carved from driftwood soaked in moonlight. This won't stop him, he said, but it will slow him. Lyra approached the well, her hands trembling. She pulled away the planks with Min's help, revealing the yawning blackness inside. Cold air gushed upward like breath. I can hear them, she whispered. Don't speak to them, Qian warned. But it was too late. Voices surged from the well, hundreds of them. men, women, children, all chanting in an ancient tongue. And in the center of them, Lyra. It was the voice of the child. Help me. A column of smoke erupted, forming into a figure slender, feminine, her face hidden in shadow. Then, another shape towered behind her. Taller. Broader. Hands like claws. No face, just a mouth. Open. Smiling. Qian hurled the talisman into the air. It glowed, casting a circle of golden light. The shadows shrieked, but the larger one laughed. The pact is broken. You cannot seal me again. Lightning split the sky, and the ground opened beneath them. Min awoke in darkness. He was lying on cold stone, alone. No Lyra. No Qian. Just a tunnel lit by faint, pulsing red light. He stood, calling their names, but the echoes returned twisted. Minho. Minho. Come to me. He followed the sound, deeper into the bowels of the earth, until he reached a chamber. There, carved into the walls, were his family's names. His grandfather. His great-grandfather. Even his uncle. And in the center a statue of a man kneeling before a woman, offering her a serpent with 3 heads. Men staggered back. This was my family's doing. Meanwhile, Lyra stood in a mirrored field. She could not see the sky. She could not feel the ground. Only reflections of herself, dozens of them, all dressed in white. But one of them moved. Not her. The girl. My Shuyan Lin. Lyra asked. The girl nodded. You are me. I don't understand. You carry my soul, the girl whispered. When Shuyan gave me away, the priests did not destroy me. They sent me forward. Buried deep inside someone, who would one day return to finish what she started. Lyra's hands trembled. Then that's why I see your visions. Why I paint your dreams. The girl smiled. You're not haunted. You're chosen. Back in the chamber, Min was faced with the truth. His ancestors had sealed the nameless husband not out of fear but out of jealousy. The river priests had wanted his power for themselves. They used Chuyan as bait. Betrayed her. Used her child as the lock. And Min's bloodline carried the mark of the seal ever since. A curse disguised as legacy. Suddenly, a voice behind him growled. My descendants. Min turned to see the nameless husband, flesh forming from smoke, a face without features, only emotion, wrath. You will pay. Above ground, Qian awoke near the well. The The sky was now blood red. Animals had fled. The trees leaned unnaturally. The wind whispered in reversed tongues. And at the edge of the forest villagers gathered, drawn by the awakening. They stood in silence, eyes empty, mouths moving but making no sound. Controlled. Enchanted. Possessed. Kien gripped his staff. He's spreading. He's turning them into vessels. In the mirrored field, Lyra was fading. Tell me how to stop him, she begged. The girl, her past self, stepped forward and placed her hand over Lyra's heart. Remember what he fears. Not the priests. Not the seals. Not the gods. She leaned in and whispered. He fears her name. The world cracked. And Lyra screamed. She awoke in the woods, gasping. Men appeared beside her, covered in blood and dust. Lyra, he whispered. He's awake. They turned to see the well glowing. Red smoke pouring out. And rising from within. A figure with black veins, golden eyes, and a smile stitched into his flesh. The nameless husband. The forest no longer whispered, it screamed. The wind carried no scent of pine or rain now. Only rot. Ash. And the coppery tang of something ancient returning. Lyra and Min stood side by side, sweat clinging to their skin despite the cold air. Before them, the nameless husband rose from the old well, his body neither flesh nor smoke, but some terrible union of both. Black veins pulsed beneath translucent skin. A crown of bone spiraled from his brow. And in his chest, where a heart should beat, was a hollow socket glowing with red fire. Min, Lyra whispered. Do you see it? I see everything now, he replied, his voice trembling. He's not just a spirit. He's something much worse. Something, built. The figure's smile was stitched, literally, across a jaw too wide, teeth too white. You carry her soul, he said, his voice like gravel dragged through a drum. And you, his eyes turned to Min, you carry her blood. Old man Kien limped out of the tree line, staff raised, voice shaking with fury. In the name of the old Pax, I forbid you to walk among men. The nameless husband raised a hand and Kien's staff turned to dust. Then the sky cracked. In the village below, people screamed as shadows walked through their doors. The wind twisted around chimneys and snuffed out every candle. The dogs howled, then fell silent. One by one, the villagers dropped to their knees, their eyes turning white. Their mouths began to chant. Her name is gone, her name is gone. But Lyra remembered. Mai Shuyan Lin. And with it, something inside her stirred. A burst of wind sent Min flying against the roots of an old fig tree. He struggled to stand, blood trickling from his temple. "What do you want from us?" he shouted. The nameless husband floated inches off the ground. "I want my daughter. I want my bride. I want the seal undone." "She's not your seal," Lyra screamed. "She's a soul. She's me." Then it happened. Her chest glowed. A red glyph burned into her sternum, the same serpent sigil they had seen in Kien's scroll. Lyra screamed and dropped to her knees. Kien rushed to her side, whispering prayers through clenched teeth. "The binding is cracking, she's waking up inside you." Suddenly, Lyra stood. But her voice was not her own. It was higher, softer, childlike. "You used me, Father." The nameless husband paused. "You never came for me." Men watched in stunned silence as Lyra's body trembled, her eyes now glowing faint gold. The girl Mai Shuyanlin was rising, and she was angry. "You promised you would come back. But you gave me to the priests like meat." Lightning cracked. Trees bent. Roots rose from the earth like claws. The sky pulsed red. The nameless husband's voice softened. "I did it to save you. You did it to save yourself." Then Lyra screamed again and the light within her burst outward. For a moment, she hovered above the ground, arms outstretched, hair swirling in every direction. The glyph on her chest unraveled into a burning chain that spun in the air, lashing toward the nameless husband. It struck him once, twice, and he staggered backward, roaring. "You cannot break me." "I don't have to," Lyra said, her voice once again her own. "I only have to remember." Men stood, wounded but resolute. "Kien," he asked, "what breaks a Dao Han?" The old man answered without hesitation. "A name. A true one. Spoken by those who carry it." Men stepped forward, locking eyes with the beast. "Then hear it." He raised his hand and shouted. "Nguyen Ti Shuyan." The forest shrieked. Birds fell from the sky. And the figure trembled. But then he laughed. "Her name, yes. But not mine." Suddenly, the air grew colder. "I erased myself," he said. "I offered my name to the river gods in exchange for freedom. There is no name to bind me." A hopeless silence fell. Even Kien bowed his head. But Lyra stepped forward, gaze steady. "Then we will give you one." She reached into her coat and pulled out the brush she'd kept since her first painting at the house. She dipped it into the blood from her own wound, and on a nearby stone, she began to write. "Nameless no more. I name Juliet, the one who betrayed blood. The moment the name was written, the wind stopped. And the fire in the monster's chest turned blue. He froze. Screamed. Clawed at the air. No, no. Names hold power. You cannot. But the glyphs returned. The seal reformed. Chains of flame and ash wrapped around his limbs. He was dragged back, inch by inch, into the well. I am your father. He howled. No, Lyra replied. You're just the man who used me. And with a final, deafening roar he was gone. Silence returned. Birdsong slowly filtered through the mist. The villagers woke from their trances, confused and weeping. Kien collapsed. Men held Lyra tight, both of them shaking, both of them alive. From the depths of the well, a faint whisper. Thank you. And Lyra knew it was her. Mai Shuyanlin was finally free. They sealed the well with stone and prayer, placed salt at every corner of the village, and burned the scrolls that had kept the cycle alive for generations. But Lyra kept one thing. The name she had written in blood. As a reminder that even nameless gods can bleed. 1 week had passed since the sealing of the well. The village slowly returned to life. The dogs barked again. The temple bell rang at dawn. Farmers returned to the fields, and the wind, once heavy with secrets, blew like it used to quiet, carrying the scent of wet earth and jasmine. But within the small, moss-covered house by the river, silence lingered. Men sat on the porch, bandaged and bruised, staring into the trees. Inside, Lyra stood in front of the mirror and stared at someone who wasn't quite her. Her reflection twitched. At first, she thought it was a trick of light. But each day, the woman in the glass tilted her head differently. Blinked a second too slow. Smiled when Lyra did not. Sometimes, at night, Lyra awoke standing in the kitchen. Once, she found herself digging in the garden with no memory of how she got there. And then there were the dreams. Not of Shuyan. Not of the nameless husband. But of herself standing in the center of a burning city, holding a crimson book whose pages could write themselves. And always, a voice whispering. You carry more than her soul. You carry what she could not. Kien had not been seen since the day they sealed the well. Some say he went into the mountains. Others claimed he had faded into mist, like the priests of old. But one night, a letter was slipped under their door. The paper was ancient. The ink shimmered faintly gold. Her spirit is free, but the bond is not broken. The seal was incomplete. The chain of blood has one more link. The god is gone. But his will lives in her. Beneath it was a single word. Watch. Min tried to brush it off. Maybe it's just a warning, in case the seal doesn't hold. But Lyra knew better. She felt it. Deep in her spine. In her blood. A pulsing heat. A second heartbeat. 3 days later, Lyra collapsed in the middle of the village. When she awoke, she was surrounded by villagers, faces tight with fear. Her eyes turned gold, one whispered. "I saw them." "She spoke in the old tongue," said another. "The one the monks used." The village elder stepped forward, an old woman who had never left her hut in years. Her eyes were milky with blindness, but her voice was clear as a bell. "She's not her anymore," the elder said. "The seal took part of her away, but left something in return." Then she added one more thing. Something Lyra never forgot. "And the child inside her is not fully hers." That night, Lyra locked herself in her room and opened her old sketchbook. Inside, she found new pages, ones she didn't remember drawing. A child in her womb, glowing like the moon, but wrapped in black chains. Above it, the serpent sigil now coiled around the child, not sealing it in, but growing from it. Min entered the room just as she turned the page. "Lyra," he said gently. "You've been sleepwalking again." She nodded. "I saw the well in my dreams. But it's not just sealed, it's watching." Min hesitated. "I've had dreams too, of the old temple. Of you, standing where Shuyan died. And a crowd, not chanting her name, but yours. They went to the shrine again that night, the place where her name had been spoken to banish the nameless husband. But this time, there were new carvings on the stone. Fresh ones. They read. The mother returned. The blood awakened. The daughter shall rise. The wind howled. And from the shadows, something stepped forward. Not a ghost. Not a man. A child. A girl no older than 6, with glowing amber eyes and skin the color of moonlight. She wore a white dress soaked at the hem, as if she had climbed out of water. She looked up at Lyra and smiled. "You're finally awake, mother." Min froze. Who are you?" The girl tilted her head. "I am Mai Shuyan Lin. And I'm not alone." Lyra staggered back. We freed you. You freed my soul. But you kept my essence. You held it, and it changed you. I lived inside you, Lyra. And now, part of you lives in me." The child stepped closer, her hands glowing with shifting light. "He tried to erase us all. But in doing so, he created something new. I am not bound by the laws of spirits or gods. I am something else. Men reached for Lyra's hand. But what does that mean? The girl smiled again. It means I will protect you both. She turned, walked into the woods, and vanished like smoke. That night, Lyra slept for the first time in days. But her dreams were not peaceful. She stood in a circle of fire. Around her were the names of women, dozens, maybe hundreds. All etched into stone. All mothers who had sacrificed something to stop a god. And in the center of it all, her own name. Beneath it, another was slowly being carved. By a hand unseen. It read, "The child of both realms." She woke with a jolt. And outside, standing beneath the jasmine tree, the child waited again. Watching. Smiling. Not evil. Not pure. Something else entirely. The next morning, the sky bled red. Men opened the door to a strange silence, no birds, no breeze, no sound except the faint creak of wood, as if the world itself was waiting. Lyra was already outside, barefoot, standing in the middle of the garden. The child was beside her. Mai Shuyunlin, or whatever she now truly was. Men stepped forward. "You came back." The girl didn't answer. Her eyes flicked toward the horizon. "They're coming." "Who?" Lyra asked. The girl replied without emotion. "The forgotten ones. Spirits like my father. Sealed long ago. Hidden beneath mountains and rivers. They felt the seal break. They felt me awaken." Men's heart pounded. What do they want? They want me. Or what I might become. That night, the stars disappeared. A black mist rolled in from the mountains, covering the fields like oil. It didn't move with the wind. It hummed. The villagers locked their doors, whispered prayers, and placed salt on their thresholds. But they knew something deeper was wrong. The child walked through the streets unafraid. Wherever her bare feet touched the earth, the mist pulled back, hissing like steam on hot iron. "She's the only thing keeping them out," Qian's voice suddenly echoed behind them. He was standing at the edge of the garden, robes tattered, staff scorched. His beard had grown wild, but his eyes still glinted with that same sharpness. Men rushed forward. "You're alive." Qian nodded. "Barely. I went to the high monastery. I wanted answers. I found something worse." He unfurled a scroll from his satchel, ancient, yellowed, sealed with 9 wax stamps. One had been broken. The prophecy was real. The nameless husband wasn't the only one sealed that day. There were others. But only one child was meant to balance them all. A bridge. A protector. A curse. Men looked at Lyra, who now held the girl's hand tightly. You're saying she's, all of it? Kien nodded grimly. She is the last lock. Or the first key. That night, Lyra felt it again, the pull in her blood. Her dreams twisted and boiled into visions. She stood on a hill of bones, beneath a black sky. Figures towered in the distance, gods with horns and burning eyes, spirits dragging chains behind them. They knelt before a throne of ash. On it sat the child. But her eyes were not golden. They were red. Mother, the girl whispered. I am not yours anymore. Lyra awoke screaming. The next morning, Kien laid out his final plan. If we wait, the Forgotten Ones will find her. They will twist her gift into a weapon. Lyra asked the question no one dared. Then what do we do? Kien hesitated. We awaken the well of returning names. Men frowned. That's a myth. No, Kien said. It's real. Hidden beneath the Temple of Lost Voices. It's where names once erased can be given again. If we speak hers there, truly name her, we might lock her form forever. You want to bind her? Lyra asked, furious. I want to save her, Kien replied. Before the others claim her for their war. They left that evening, cloaked in salt, charms, and fading hope. The Temple of Lost Voices sat on a cliff above the sea, its towers shattered, its bells rusted. But within it was the door Kien had spoken of, a spiral staircase leading down to the chamber no one dared open. The child entered first. It's waiting for me, she said. Men and Lyra followed. Inside, the air was thick. Old songs floated in broken echoes. And then a pool. Circular. Still. Like glass. On its surface were names. Thousands. Each one glowed faintly before vanishing. Lyra looked to Kien. What now? You must give her a name that binds her soul. One no god can erase. Not Shuyanlin. Not cursed. Not sealed. A name of your own choosing. Lyra knelt before the child. Can I choose? The girl nodded. Only you can. Lyra whispered. Ceres. You are Ceres. A name no one can touch. A name I give with love, not fear. The waters shivered. The chamber trembled. and for the first time, the girl cried. Tears gold and silver fell into the pool. And the temple roared. Outside, the mist vanished. The humming stopped. The stars returned. And Ceres smiled. I am not a key. I am not a curse. I am your daughter. Lyra held her close. But from beyond the cliffs, something watched. Eyes older than stone. Voices louder than thunder. One seal may have been reforged, but 8 remained. And they had begun to crack. For the first time in weeks, Lyra woke without fear. The sunlight through the curtains felt real again. The scent of morning dew and wild jasmine drifted lazily through the house. In the corner of the room, Ceres slept curled like a cat, her breathing soft, her golden eyes fluttering beneath closed lids. A new name. A new beginning. But deep in Lyra's heart, something still twisted like a string pulled too tight, ready to snap. Min, however, seemed lighter. He spent the morning repairing the porch, humming an old song his mother used to sing. He kissed Lyra on the forehead. It's over, he said. But Kien's final words from the temple still echoed in her mind. One name bound. 8 more breaking. That afternoon, Ceres stood before the mirror, tracing her fingers across its glass. It's cracking, she whispered. Lyra stepped beside her. What is? Ceres pointed at her own reflection. Not the glass. The world. Lyra knelt. What do you see? I see rivers bleeding backward. I see trees crying salt. I see the moon turning its back. Men entered the room, and Ceres turned to him, her voice older than it should have been. The others are stirring. At sunset, the wind changed. It no longer smelled of earth and rain. It smelled of forgotten prayers, of incense burned in fear, of bones ground into dust. A tremor rippled through the village. Doors creaked open on their own. The wells bubbled without cause. The temple bell rang. Once. Twice. Then shattered. That night, Kien returned, barely standing, his robes torn and soaked in blood. He carried with him a bundle wrapped in black silk. What is that? Min asked. Kien collapsed on the floor, whispering, a name, they tried to erase. Lyra unwrapped the bundle. Inside was a stone tablet, etched in a language neither modern nor ancient, but something in between. Ceres stared at it and whispered. It's the name of the one who was never sealed. Lightning split the sky. The earth moaned. And from the north, a pillar of smoke rose. By morning, half the villagers had fled. The other half stood outside the shrine in silence, awaiting instruction. Kien could barely speak, but he pointed toward the river. They're coming through the vein gate. Men frowned. What is that? A fracture in the earth. A place where spirits bleed through into the waking world. Lyra looked at Ceres. Can we stop them? Ceres turned toward the trees, her hair caught in the wind like silk. Not stop, but delay. They do not fear weapons. They fear one thing only. Men stepped forward. Names. Ceres nodded. But not spoken ones. True ones. Buried in blood. That night, Ceres led them to the Chamber of Hollow Tongues, a place even Kien refused to enter. Carved beneath the old cliffs where her mother had first awakened her, it was a dome of echoing stone, filled with skulls that whispered only when the moon was gone. Ceres stood at its center and raised her arms. Dozens of voices flooded the chamber, speaking over one another. Azara, Benel, Shukshu, Sii. Each name shimmered in the air, glowing briefly before fading. They are the forgotten, Ceres said. They are waking. She turned to Lyra and Min. One of them was never sealed. One of them is already inside someone. Min's blood ran cold. Inside, who? Ceres looked him straight in the eyes. You. The chamber fell silent. Lyra's breath caught. Min stepped back. No. That can't be true. I'm not. You carry his blood, Ceres said gently. You come from the same line that offered my soul to the seal. One of the 9 used your ancestor as a vessel. And now, he lives in you. Kien's staff slipped from his fingers. But you've never hurt me, Lyra said. Because the seal held, Ceres said. But it's breaking. And when it does, he will surface. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She sat beside Min as he tossed in bed, sweat glistening on his brow. She touched his hand. He jolted upright, eyes black, lips moving in another tongue. Ash to sky. Root to flame. I will return. Then he collapsed. By dawn, the sky had cracked. Literally. Above the village, a thin black fracture stretched across the heavens like a scar. Through it, faint red stars pulsed, none that belonged to any constellation. Kien awoke and whispered, "The sky gate." What is that? Lyra asked. A doorway not meant for gods, but for what gods fear. Ceres stood silently at the window, eyes glowing. We don't have time. He's coming. Men stood in the garden, silent, staring at the sky. The fracture widened. From within it, a shape began to crawl through, long, thin, not quite solid. A limb. A whisper. A hunger. And deep inside Min, something laughed. The sky bled ink. From the black fracture above, thin tendrils of mist had descended into the village like puppet strings, searching for a host, a passage, a will that had once been broken. Men stood at the edge of the shrine steps, barefoot in the cold morning air, unmoving. His eyes were open, but it was not Min who looked out from them anymore. Inside his chest, something pulsed. Not a heart. A gate. Lyra and Ceres stood behind him, neither daring to speak. Kien stood further back, drawing protective circles on the earth with salt and crushed lotus petals. "He's holding it back," Kien said quietly. "But not for long." Ceres nodded. "The thing inside him isn't like the others. It doesn't want destruction, not yet." Lyra clutched Ceres's hand. "Then what does it want?" Ceres's voice dropped. "It wants to be reborn." Suddenly, Min spoke. But not with his voice. "I am not the gate. I am what waited behind it." He turned to face Lyra. His smile was soft, almost gentle, but wrong. Too wide. Too calm. "You were the one who freed me, Lyra. You named her, and with that naming, you unshackled me." Lyra shook her head. "I did it to save her. And in doing so, doomed him. You chose the girl over the man. Now the man will become me." Then came the storm. The sky ripped open, the black fracture above yawning into a swirling vortex. Thunder cracked, but no lightning followed. Instead, the sky began to pour upward, trees bending not from wind, but from something pulling the earth toward the heavens. And from the vortex, a figure began to descend. Not quite solid. Not quite spirit. A silhouette of burnt starlight and hollow eyes. Kien fell to his knees. "He's coming through, Min." Ceres stepped forward, her voice like a chime. "He needs a tether. If we break it now, he'll be forced back." "But," Lyra choked, "that would kill Min." Ceres looked at her. "Yes." Lyra staggered. "Min, no." The thing inside Min began to float, his feet no longer touching the earth. His arms hung loose, his head tilted to one side. "Do you remember our wedding day, Lyra?" Her heart stopped. "Not this life, the one before." Flashes flooded her vision. A pale garden of paper lanterns. A crimson river flowing upward. Her own hands, painted in gold. You were the one who sealed me. You called me husband once. You were the first gate. Lyra screamed. Ceres wrapped her arms around her. His memories are bleeding into you. They're not yours. Lyra clenched her teeth. But they feel like mine. Kien reached into his satchel and pulled out a bone dagger, carved from the fang of a sky serpent. Its blade shimmered faintly in and out of existence. It can cut the tether, he said. But it has to be driven into the heart. Yours, or his. No. Lyra cried. There has to be another way. Ceres whispered, there is. She stepped forward, standing between the rising figure and the rest of the world. I can contain him, she said. I carry both blood and spirit. If I let him enter me, I can trap him again. Lyra was horrified. You'll be lost. Ceres smiled gently. Or I'll become something new. The wind howled. The figure spoke again. Child. You cannot hold what I am. No, Ceres replied. But I can become what you fear. She closed her eyes and began to chant. Not a prayer. Not a curse. But a new name. Ceres Vel. Daughter of flame. Keeper of stars. Vessel of light and shadow. The sky split again and from her chest, light erupted. Not golden. Not silver. But every color at once. The figure screamed. Men convulsed, hovering mid-air, caught between the beast and the woman he loved. Lyra stepped forward. Men. Fight it? For a moment, just a moment, his eyes flickered. Lyra. And she threw the dagger. It never struck his chest. It struck the shadow behind him. And that was enough. The form shattered. Men fell like a ragdoll, limp, but breathing. The vortex closed. The stars returned. And Ceres collapsed, her hair white as ash. They buried the dagger at the base of the shrine. Men would not wake for 3 days. When he did, he wept not from pain, but relief. I thought I'd lost myself forever, he whispered. Lyra held him. You came back. No, Ceres said quietly. You brought him back. But the sky remained, cracked. Just a little. And in the far east, an old temple bell rang by itself. The village held its breath. For days, the sky stayed unnaturally quiet, no birds, no stars. Just that lingering crack across the firmament like a scar no god dared mend. Inside the small shrine, Lyra watched over both Min and Ceres. Min stirred in fevered dreams, sweating cold, whispering fragments of a forgotten tongue. His soul had returned, but the path it took left something behind. Ceres did not speak at all. She sat in the corner, eyes open, glowing faintly under her white hair. The light in her chest, the prism of many colors, had dulled to a single hue, violet, the color of twilight and thin places between worlds. "She's not sleeping," Lyra whispered to Kien. "She's waiting." On the third night, Ceres finally moved. She rose slowly, with the grace of something no longer wholly human. She walked to the old mirror, the same one that had once reflected another soul, another fate. Her voice was quiet. "He's not the only one trying to cross over." Lyra felt her spine go cold. "Who else?" "The other 8, Ceres answered. "Now that one has failed, the others will change their approach. They won't come through broken vessels. They'll come through willing ones." Kien stepped closer. "Cultists." "No," Ceres said. "Dreamers. People who think the gods have abandoned them. People who want a world remade." That night, Min finally woke. His eyes opened slowly. Not gold. Not black. Just tired. "Lyra," he whispered. "I remember everything." Lyra took his hand. "Everything?" He nodded. "Even the life before. Even being the nameless husband." Kien raised an eyebrow. "That shouldn't be possible." "It wasn't a possession," Min said. "It was a cycle. I was born from the remnants of that soul, over and over, like an echo." Lyra's voice shook. "Does that mean you'll become him again?" Min looked toward Ceres. "No. Because this time, we broke the chain. But breaking chains has consequences." That morning, the river of shadows, a stream that had run dry for over 2 centuries, began to flow again. Only this time, it ran backward. Villagers gathered, watching in horror as dead fish floated upstream, and petals from the shrine trees bloomed in reverse. Ceres approached the bank. "This is a summons," she said. "Someone is calling me." That night, Ceres stood alone in the forest, at the edge of a clearing known only in stories, the Whispering Hollow. There, among ancient trees, 8 stones stood, each carved with a symbol long since erased from history. Runes not meant to be read, but felt. From each stone, a shadow emerged. Not full figures. Not yet. Fragments. Voices. Faces. Mouths without eyes. Hands made of echo. Series. The voices layered, overlapping. You carry the paradox, the failure and the hope, the gate and the lock. You must choose. Ceres stood firm. I've already chosen. Then you must face the one who did not. At that moment, the clearing twisted. Reality bent inward. And there, standing across from Ceres, was herself. But not her current form. The old version. Golden-eyed. Hair dark and short. The girl who had once been called Shuyan Lin. You never let me go, the reflection said. You took my name. My pain. My purpose. Ceres trembled. Because you were trapped. Because you were alone. I was chosen. The figure snapped. To be the seal. To be the sacrifice. You were meant to die with me. I chose to live, Ceres whispered. To become more. The reflection snarled. Then let us see who the world remembers. They clashed not with weapons, but memory. Visions burst into flame, the well, the shrine, the burning city, the name carved in blood. Each struck the other with lives unlived. Ceres screamed. But she did not fall. Instead, she reached into her chest and pulled out the prism of light. The violet core. I carry all of you, she whispered. But I am more. And she swallowed it whole. The reflection shattered into petals. The hollow went silent. And the 8 stones, dimmed. One by one. Back at the shrine, Lyra and men awoke simultaneously from the same dream. In it, Ceres stood at the center of the world, glowing like a comet. Above her, the sky bled violet. Around her, the earth wept salt. And in her eyes, was everything. Ceres returned at dawn. No words. Just a new name etched into the shrine's wall. Ceres the once born. Kien whispered, she is no longer a vessel. Lyra took her hand. Then what is she? Men answered for them all. A choice made real. But far to the west, beyond mountains unmapped, a horn was blown in a dead city. And 7 voices answered. The mountains burned blue. Lyra stood atop the eastern hill, staring into the distance where dawn should have broken, but the sky remained stained in a faint violet, like a bruise too deep to heal. Ceres hadn't spoken since her return from the Whispering Hollow. She barely slept. She barely blinked. Men watched her from the porch, arms wrapped around his chest, as if afraid his own heart might betray him again. She's not broken, Lyra said gently. Men didn't look up. No. She's beyond that now. The first visitor arrived that evening. A man in white robes with silver thread, his head shaved, his eyes blindfolded. He carried no weapons, but the way he walked told Lyra everything. This man had killed, and killed well. He knelt before Ceres without a word. Kien emerged from the shrine, face pale. "Do you know what that is?" he whispered to Min. Min nodded grimly. "The Order of the Returning Light. They were wiped out during the Night Rain War," Kien hissed. "Apparently," Min replied, "not all of them." The blindfolded man spoke. "I am Izurai, seeker of names. I have crossed 23 forgotten borders. I have walked the dream-swept wastes barefoot. I have drowned in the cursed estuary thrice. I come to kneel before the girl who holds the last star. I come to ask her blessing. Or her blade." Ceres looked at him. "I offer neither," she said. Izurai did not rise. He smiled. "You are the once born. Your name lives in 3 realms. Your shadow stains even the godless lands. They fear you now, my lady. And when fear arises, so do the zealots." Kien stepped forward, his staff glowing faintly. "What do you want from her?" Izurai turned his head slightly, listening. "There are 7 cities left in the world that still speak the true tongue. One of them has fallen. 2 more burn. 4 remain. And in each, a herald has risen. They call for her." Lyra stiffened. "To do what?" "To choose," Izurai said simply. That night, the stars above blinked off. One by one. Until only a single violet flare remained directly above the village. The last star. Ceres stood beneath it, arms open, her hair rippling without wind. "Each of them wants a different version of me," she said softly. "Some want a god. Some want a sword. Some want a child to lock away." Men joined her. "And what do you want?" Ceres turned, her eyes still full of things no child should hold. "I want silence." The next morning, the second visitor came. A woman, barefoot, wrapped in robes of uncut thread, her skin carved with glowing runes. Her voice sang as she walked, each syllable twisting the air around her. She called herself Thyla, and the moment she saw Ceres, she wept. "You are the syllable unspoken," she said. "The answer we forgot." She knelt and opened a scroll covered in moving ink. On it, the names of hundreds of cities, all crossed out. "We thought we were the last." Lyra helped her up. "The last what?" "The last who remembered the 8th thou," Thyla said. that the once-born would rise not as savior, but as reminder. Men stepped forward. Reminder of what? Thyla looked at Ceres, her voice a whisper. That even the gods are afraid to die. That night, Ceres dreamed of wings made of glass, beating against a sky full of mouths. In her dream, she walked through a field of mirrors, each reflecting a version of herself. A child with blackened eyes, ruling a nation of ash. A mother made of mist, singing a lullaby to a burning moon. A corpse crowned in roots, buried beneath a silent temple. A comet, hurtling across time, screaming without sound. Each mirror shattered as she passed. She woke not with a scream, but a smile. I've made my decision, she said. Min, Lyra, Kian, Iserai, and Thyla gathered in the shrine. Ceres stood at the center, now dressed in a robe made of woven starlight, a gift from Thyla, who claimed it was spun from the thread of time. I will not be a god, she said. I will not be a weapon. I will not be a key. But I will be a voice. She raised her hand. And the shrine shook. Walls peeled back. The earth bent. The air became memory. And the villagers outside looked up to see a symbol drawn across the sky in living flame. A circle, split by a single line. The sigil of the once-born. Far away, in cities unseen, the sigil appeared on towers, rivers, skin, dreams. And in each place, someone fell to their knees. Or raised a sword. The world was dividing. Not into light and dark, but into those who believed in Ceres, and those who feared what she might become. From the ashes of a ruined city, a new voice rose, a voice wrapped in silk and soot. He called himself the Nine. And he whispered, let her gather them all. Let her bring the faithful. And then, let her break. The sky was gone. Not broken. Not clouded. Just, gone. Above the shrine, where the last star once hung, there was now only emptiness and absence that hurt to look at, like a wound torn in the universe. Ceres stood in the garden where cherry blossoms once bloomed, now bare. Her robes of starlight no longer shimmered. They absorbed light instead, an omen. It begins today, she said. Lyra, standing beside her, felt her own breath grow thin. Will it end today too? Ceres didn't answer. Because she didn't know. From the north, they came. The pilgrims of the veil, followers of Iserai, clad in blindfolds and silence. From the east came Thyla's choir, bearing songs that melted stone and rewrote air. From the south came the faithless legion, those who once served the god of mirrors, now broken. And from the west, nothing. Until the sky split, and the ninth arrived. He did not walk. He unfolded. like a memory pulled from the end of time. His face had no features, just shifting light. His voice was not heard, but felt. Like ice cracking inside your chest. You have gathered them all, once born. You believe you lead. But you are the echo, not the voice. Ceres stepped forward, her hand glowing faintly. I'm not here to lead, she said. I'm here to remember. Then remember this, the ninth said. And he reached out. And the world shattered. Not physically. Chronologically. Lyra blinked and she was 10, again. Holding a doll in a burning house. Men cried out and suddenly, he was a boy, watching his mother vanish into the well. Thyla screamed as her voice dissolved into silence. Iserai tore at his face because his blindfold was never real. He had never been blind. He had just refused to see. Only Ceres stood firm. She reached into the collapsing time and pulled it back into shape. I am once born, she whispered. Because I was never born before. I am not a cycle. I am the break. I am not what came next. I am what came new. She raised her hand. And the sky folded inward, a final eclipse. The ninth attacked, not with flame, not with force, but with doubt. What if you fail? What if you're wrong? What if they only follow you because they're afraid? Ceres wept, but her tears fell upward. And from each one, a name was spoken. Not hers, but those of everyone she'd saved. Lyra, Min, Kien. Even the nameless priestess who died to protect the shrine. Each name was a chain. Each chain held the ninth. Min rose to his feet. His voice clear. I remember now. I was a vessel. But I am also a gatekeeper. He stepped forward and locked the time fracture behind them. Thyla sang. Iserai bled, his eyes open. Lyra kissed Ceres on the forehead. You're not alone, she said. Ceres nodded. And whispered her true name. Not the name of power. Not the name of myth. But the name her mother gave her before the seals, before the temples, before the stars. My. And with that, the ninth unraveled. Not in anger. Not in defeat. But in peace. Because finally, someone remembered. The sky blinked back. Stars returned. Cherry blossoms bloomed. And Ceres smiled. I think it's over, Lyra whispered. No, said Min. It's just begun. Epilogue. Years passed. The shrine became a sanctuary not of worship, but of memory. Pilgrims came not to kneel but to tell stories. Of a girl who chose not to be God. A man who chose not to be cursed. A world that chose to change. I wandered sometimes. Not as savior. Not as star. Just, herself. Pushpin title. Once born, the Starless Gate. Memo description. In a forgotten village beneath a cracked sky, a girl named Ceres awakens with a name that does not belong to her and a fate that never should have been hers. When ancient forces begin to stir and the final star disappears, Ceres must choose between becoming a god, a weapon, or something the world has never seen, a voice that remembers. Together with Min, a boy haunted by lives he never lived, and Lyra, a protector torn between love and prophecy, Ceres walks a path that weaves through memory, time, and shattered faith. Torn between fractured realities and pursued by cults, broken gods, and the last of the nine, Ceres must confront the forgotten history of the world and write her own ending. 12 chapters. One choice. Will she ascend? Or remember who she truly is?